What's up, y'all? It's your girl Patricia. How you guys doing? How you living? How you feeling? Hope you guys are doing well. I am so excited to come to you guys today with this video. Welcome to the Ask a Married Woman discussion. I did this for the first time a few years ago on my channel, and you guys seem to really like it. And I decided to go ahead and bring it back, bring some more friends, and include you guys in on the fun. So what we did this time is we took some questions that were submitted anonymously from you all, and I presented these questions to a panel of married and single women. Now, this is supposed to be a discussion about dating, life, love, sex, and marriage, okay? Even though it's called Ask a Married Woman. And so I wanted to bring a pretty diverse group so that we could really have a good and useful discussion. I really wanted to create an environment where you guys could ask the questions that have been burning in your hearts and get real raw answers, and that we did do. So as you guys can see, this video is extremely long. So go get your coffee, your tea, whatever it is, your little wine, whatever it is that you need to sip on while you watch this, or play it in the house as you're cleaning or in the car as you're driving. For those of you guys who were like, hey, I asked the question and I just want to know what you guys said or how you guys answered it, I'm going to leave a list of all the questions down below and a timestamp to the questions. Now, if you watch it that way, that is totally cool and up to you. But there were some questions that came into the discussion that were not submitted. So there was a time where I asked the question. There's a time where another panelist asked a question to the group. So I really encourage you guys to watch the entire video. We touch on a lot of things. We touched on who has it harder, the married woman or the single woman. You know, a lot of single people feel like married people feel like their life is easy, that the single life is easy and that the married life is hard. And so we discussed that a little bit. We talked a little bit about Will and Jada. So that's not time stamped. You guys are gonna have to watch the whole video to get that. So initially I planned for this to be an open Zoom call, but I had a lot of technical difficulties. So when I thought I was recording the whole group, I was really just recording myself. But I really didn't want to redo this because I didn't want to lose the authenticity of the initial call. So first, I do want to introduce the panel to you guys. First is yours truly, Patricia, also known as God's Design Online on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And here on my channel, I talk about personal development, womanhood, and lifestyle with a real big emphasis on intentional living. Single for a while before getting married, and I did recently get married. I'm just a little bit over a year married now. So those of you guys who watch my Singles Club series know a little bit more about my journey and everything like that. Next up, we have my sister Alice, who's been married for 2 years. And you guys already know, who watch my channels, that her and I are really close. She is a nurse as well. She is a professor as well. She just switched jobs. She is the co-owner of Graceful Med Boutique, which is the company that her and I started. I'll leave a link down below if you're interested in supporting that. And yeah, she's all the way awesome. I find her to be quite grounded and balanced. You'll see a similar energy from us. So if you like me, you'll love my sister. Next up, we have Evelyn, also known as Chef Evelyn or Evelyn Inc. If you're familiar with my channel, you've seen her plenty of times on my channel. She is a chef, entrepreneur, business strategist, coach, life and career coach. She is a speaker, all the things, y'all. I love me some Evelyn. You guys have seen her on the channel before. She is a true friend of mine and a single woman. Next up, we have Miss B. Wade. Miss B. Wade, I've been knowing her since college. She is a makeup artist, a celebrity makeup artist. She beat my face to the gods on my wedding day, and I've been knowing her for a long time. She's a very real soul. I will say that, a very real soul, and I'm glad to call her friend. She is divorced, and so I really wanted to get that aspect as well into the conversation because I thought that would be really useful. Next up, we have Miss Jasmine. Miss Jasmine is also one of my longtime friends, and I'm talking about like over 10 years. Yeah, definitely over 10 years. Bridesmaid in my wedding, and I just absolutely love her, adore her, her husband, and her daughter. She's been married for 7 years. Last but not least, we have Miss Lexi. Miss Lexi is also a good friend of mine. She is a physical therapist. She is a business owner. She owns a company called CJ's Busy Box. You have little ones at home, you will love Lexi's subscription service through CJ's Busy Box. I'm gonna leave the information for that down below. I love me some Lexi. I love me some Chad. They are wonderful people, very wise, that's for sure. She's been married for 11 years. So just to give you guys a little preview, I'm going to share with you some of my favorite moments from our discussion.
Ain't nothing, I mean, dry as the heels of Gilboza.
My in-laws are awesome people. Let me start there. They're horrible at boundaries, though, which is why we live in Texas and they live in Alabama.
And I had sex with my husband before marriage, but even still after, it felt wrong.
Our foundation from the jump, it could have never been solid for that one reason alone.
I was a virgin when I got married.
At 35, I was diagnosed with cancer, right? Like, it's very different to go to cancer treatments by yourself than to go to cancer treatment with a spouse, even if the marriage isn't good at the time.
I honestly believe that marriages can survive almost anything.
My trauma picked my husband. My insecurities picked my husband.
From the rooter to the tutor, have we disclosed everything about them cheeks?
Being a single parent even is easier than being married to the wrong person.
In my mind, that's not marriage. That's a contract. That's not a covenant.
Let's go ahead and get this discussion started.
So let's get into these questions. The first one is marriage overrated?
I would say no. I guess speaking from somebody who has been in it and now am out of it and wanting that desire again, I think that, that question is, I don't know. I guess it really depends on the purpose, on the person. For me, it's not overrated. I understand that the purpose of marriage, wanting to build a legacy, wanting to leave something behind for my children, and not only just, what my future husband and I build together, but also just breaking those generational curses, like so many other things. But to me, no. I would say no.
I agree with B. It's definitely not overrated. I think that some people may feel it is at some point if they come into it with the wrong expectations. And so if you come into it with the right expectations, then you have the opportunity to really appreciate the fullness that marriage is, and the beauty that it is, without the disappointment of, oh, I thought he was here to make me happy. And then when you find that your happiness is up to you and you both complement one another, but you're not trying to fulfill one another. And when you have that perspective, then it's not overrated because you both are enjoying one another and the fullness of one another without the expectation of, like, you have to make me happy or you have to do this for me, when that's really my job.
Did you go into marriage with that idea of he was here, or anybody else, that he's here to make me happy?
No, for myself, I didn't come in with that expectation. And I think that's because I spent so long trying to learn what makes myself happy, and being complete, I guess, in a sense, in that, so that wasn't an expectation from him.
I will say I completely agree with Alice in that no, like, it wasn't an expectation that all of my happiness comes from him. But I did have the expectation to be happy, and I still do. Okay.
Right.
And those are two different things. To talk about, like, if marriage in general overall is overrated, I think like everybody, B, Lexi, Alice have already stated, it depends on the type of presuppositions you go into marriage with. Like, what is your standard for marriage? And based off of those standards and even distortions will determine if it's overrated or not.
Next question. How soon is too soon to get married? what are your thoughts on getting engaged after less than a year of being in an official relationship?
I think it depends, because is it less than a year in an official relationship, but it was somebody you knew your whole entire life? Or is it somebody, you know, less than a year who you just met over the internet, and, you know, like, they may have a whole full backstory that you have no idea about? I think that it kind of changes the tone in that kind of sense, because you're coming from a clean slate versus you already kind of have an idea of who the person is or who their friends are, mutual friends, family, things like that. So I think that it depends on a lot of different things. But in general, I would say that there really isn't a timeline per se. Obviously, you want to get to know a person for a certain amount of time, because somebody can be one person and then 3 months down the line, they show you a whole different personality. So there's no timeline in and of itself, but you need to take the time to get to know someone.
I think too, like, to add to Alice's point, you should be together long enough to actually go through some things, live some life together, to see if you can work through things together. Sometimes it's, even with friends, you'll know how well of a friend you are if you can travel with that person and still be friends.
Right.
You know, because there's some people you're like, we're brunch friends. We're brunch friends. You know, and then there are other people like, yo, we could travel around the globe and we'd be fine. So being able to go through some things, be able to tackle challenges together of various types. How does this person respond to stress? What is their attitude like when you get in an argument and everything's not great? How well do you guys communicate and work through that? Or are they ignoring you and shutting you out, and that's their method of dealing with with confrontation? Like, how do they do those things? So being able to live a little bit of life, I mean, that may happen in 6-8 months, that might happen in 2 years, you never know. But being able to have those things where you can say, oh, okay, this person addresses these things in this way. Is that something that I can actually work with?
To piggyback off these ladies, I totally agree. I think with me dating now, that has been really major for me. When you first start dating, you are, everything's good. Everybody's just, I like you, you like me. We're hanging out, we're doing all these things. But like Lexi said, like, who are you when you're angry? Who are you when you're upset? And until I see that, and like you said, there's no amount of time where you can say that, oh, this is that person, because a year could go by and you think you know them, and then you don't. And then that anger is on another level. And it's like, okay, well, you were this gentle being before, and now you're not. And a lot of it is really just, for me, just using my discernment. I'd be praying and just really just checking the energy, checking the vibe, just making sure that they are consistent. That's one thing I look for too, is consistency.
Like, to agree with Lexi, like, and Alice, about the timing, it's all over the place, because I've seen people date someone for 10 years, get married, and then get divorced after 2 years. And then I've seen people who dated and got married within 6 months and have been happily married for 27 years, right? And so I think there's a maturity level there. I think that's how intentional are they being? Are y'all just kiki and ha-ha the whole time, and you're not asking the serious questions and going through those things? So, I mean, I think people are looking for that timeline sometimes, almost like if they can be like, oh, here's an ultimatum. And it's like, well, it depends. How mature are you? How mature is he? Have you seen them in all those different situations? Because I've seen it run the gamut, just observing.
And I agree. To be honest, I think like these ladies, like, there is no time limit, but I do think that it should be evaluated on your own self-awareness of who you are as an individual. Have you dealt with your trauma? I tell friends, couples, people that I meet all the time, one thing, if I did have a regret and it wasn't a matter of how long or too little, was that I wish I was already in counseling and I had mentors, but I wish I would have just did a little more, a little longer. And because for me, it had nothing to do with the desire to need to be married so, so bad, or we've been dating for this long. I didn't care. Like, I want a relationship that lasts, period. And more than that, I want to be a healthy, whole person already, And so if you can't go into, let's not even talk about marriage, a relationship, and you don't have your non-negotiables, if you don't have a community, because I do believe iron sharpens iron, like, younger, same age or older, to like bring that person around, to have other people really get a sense of things that you may not see. If that person is not invested in self-awareness, self-care, dealing with their own traumas, then we're not even talking about marriage. It could be 25 years. We're not talking about marriage. Matter of fact, we're not talking about dating,
Mm-hmm.
So I think for real, like, let's not even talk about marriage. So to me, I think that should always be gauged by both individuals' level of self-awareness of just their baggage.
That is the mistake I made with my first marriage. I wasn't healed. I didn't deal with my trauma. My trauma picked my husband. My insecurities picked my husband. And once I realized that, when I came out of it, I had people like, oh, you're single now, like you're divorced, let's go have fun. No, because I have not healed, and who I am is going to go attract that same guy, and he's going to be worse, more than likely. So I was like, no, let me deal with my trauma before I even, like Jasmine said, even consider a relationship, because I do not want my insecurities picking that again.
I feel like there's a sweet spot in the middle, because on one end, there's the dude that's rushing you down the aisle for a reason, whether it be a green card, a cover up, a something. And then on the other hand, there's the guy that's wasting your time. You're in a relationship for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10 years. And you're like, hey, where's the ring? So while there isn't like a specific time, there does have to be some intentionality and purpose to the relationship. That's for sure. While I don't think people should rush to the aisle, because truth be told, many women, before he even says hello, you got yourself in a white dress and a tux in your head, right? Why you shouldn't run, at the same time, you should be marriage minded. And right. that's kind of how I see it.
I feel like, in like a couple of months, really, but like the time after that is really just confirming, to see if there's consistency of what you already know, and affirming that. But I think that you can really tell a lot about someone, in a short period of time. If you're spending a lot of time with them and really seeing their character and who they are, but you're just using that time afterwards, really just to start to confirm all the things in your mind, making sure that there isn't a new personality, 6 months down the line
that pops up. You got to look with this eye. This eye right. Disclose your actual history with someone you're dating.
I'll start off. I'll go ahead and start off. I'm just going to be upfront. One, I think that is a subjective thing, right? Everybody's different. And it depends on the type of relationship that you want. As for me and my house, okay, we dating. The only thing you need to know is what we're not doing during this time. And as time goes on, I mean, if it's at the point where we're engaged and we have a wedding date and we are planning, and this is like that in-between time of, I don't even want to say premarital. This is the next step. And we're talking, because you should, I think those details should, I need to know if you've had an STD or D's, okay? Plurals. I need to know, come on, that this is real. You know, I need to know, do you get your yearly physical? I need to know, have all, from the rooter to the tutor, have we disclosed everything about them cheeks? Because I need to know, you know, I don't want no surprises. I don't want no kind of surprises. But I do think that it depends on where you are. For me, that's definitely further down the line, because sex and just physicality really clouds our judgment. And you don't want to find yourself in situations where you backtracking and they like, oh, by the way, I'm taking antibiotics for X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? But I do believe that if it's initial dating, no, I don't think that's anybody's business to know. I do think that full disclosure of your sexual history, not to the point of necessarily shaming you, but to like lay out, like if we've talked about our educational background and our professional, like if we're about to, you know, be in each other's space intimately in every way, I should know, you know, what you dealing with, what you working with. Am I gonna go to Kroger and see out of the 5 cashiers, 3 of them you've been with? Don't catch me. Don't, you know what I mean? Don't let me be embarrassed, you know, and vice versa. Let me know what the situation is so I can choose. You know, because if I'm committed, then it shouldn't matter if I'm choosing you, that means I'm choosing your sexual past. So I would say during that time when it's transitioned from where the intention is to get married, and it's a little bit, I know I said engaged, but I would say before you get engaged, to really like, okay, before we take this next leap, let's, you know, discuss these things.
I agree. I think that, you know, I definitely believe that it should be disclosed. It doesn't have to be on the first date though. Because I know ladies that want to know like your credit score and everything on the first date. And I was like, well, that's why you're still single. But but at the same time, you want to make sure that, like Jazz said, like disclosing that information is important, you know, not just for their own health, but your own health. And so you understand kind of the life they lived before you. So, you know, that's important information. Do you have any kids I don't know about? Is anybody going to show up on our door like, hey, I think you're my dad. Like, we need to have these conversations. And it may happen, you know, later on in the relationship, in a dating relationship, as you get more and more serious. You know, you might not have that conversation in the first, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, but as you're, you know, getting deeper in it, learning more about one another, that should come up. That should be a discussion.
I think that, like for my husband and I, we disclosed, I think like pretty much everything, but it was like shortly after we got engaged. We probably should have talked about it a little bit earlier. We talked about you know, sexual activity, but not like in its entirety until after we got engaged. And, but I think it was important because, you know, you want to know what you're walking into. And, you know, when you get married, it's for life. And I think that we were so serious that the responses weren't really going to matter anyhow, but it's just important to know so you know what to do going forward.
Yeah, for us, it was shortly before engagement that was talked about. And it was kind of like Jazz was saying, like, so I know if I walk into Walmart, I'm not like, you know what I mean? I just need to know. I need to be aware of what I'm walking into. And to be honest, it wasn't like a thing. It really wasn't a thing. It was definitely vulnerable for the both of us. And I didn't feel, it was weird. to start off with, but I didn't feel uncomfortable at all. And I didn't feel, and if you're, if you're with the right person, you won't feel judged, you won't feel looked down upon or anything like that. So we've had a very honest and open relationship from the very beginning. And so we just kind of saw it as another step of being open and honest with each other. So the next question is, single ladies, how are you preparing yourselves for marriage?
I mean, I'm in my late 30s, right? So I would say most of my 20s was lived in La La Land. That fairy tale, watching way too many romantic comedies kind of thing. And then I think when I got into my 30s and I was like, okay, I say I want to be married, and I think a lot of women may fall into this category that you think you want to get married, but you really don't know what you're signing up for. And so I went on this path of, okay, if this is something that I say that I want, let me really understand what this is. So what I decided to do was to surround myself with people who were in different phases of marriage, who had what I would call successful marriages, and just they allow me to get like behind the scenes. So I've got people in my life who've been married 55 years and them telling me stories of, when we first got married, this happened and this happened. And you're like, okay, and people who've been married 10 years, 15 years, friends who are divorced. I have a good friend who's a marriage and family therapist. So I get a lot of kind of like information behind that. And then I decided to start studying marriage, right? And I mean, like we discussed earlier, I don't think you can study away issues, but knowing that some things are going to happen, my friend who's a therapist says all the time, you can do all the pre-work you want. Some issues are not even going to show up until you get married, right? And so knowing that, so I'm not shocked by that, like, knowing that I'm going to have to work through that, knowing that marriage is going to have to go through seasons. So really starting to learn, because I had this notion of, we go to college for 4 years, but we put people in premarital counseling for 6 weeks. And I was like, the two don't match. So I was like, let me get my own premarital on if that's something that I want to say, if that's something I say I want to do. And what happened was I went through this phase like, oh, it's not as bad as some people say it is, but it's not as running through the metal as some people make it out to be. And then I had to re-ask myself, now that you know what the real work is, or you've seen it in action with other couples, you've read about it, you've heard about it, do you want to walk that path, right? And so I met some people who've kind of going down a similar path as me and decided that they didn't want to do the work. And so they wanted to remain single. And then, I came to the conclusion, okay, I feel like I have a more realistic idea of what marriage is going to be. And so I'm open to that work. But that's how I've been preparing. I mean, there's a lot of woo-woo stuff out there, like, pray for your husband for 31 days, spin around in a circle, go on a fast. And I'm like, that's fine. Get you some people that's been through some stuff and just sit down and talk to them and let them open your eyes. So
for me, I am healing. I'm getting my ish together. It's really important for me to make sure that my next relationship, I go into it. Okay, Lox. All right. My next relationship, I go into it completely, like I said, just on my stuff, making sure that I'm not looking for someone to fulfill a part of me that even I don't even know how to fulfill. It's completely unfair to meet someone and expect them to love and deal with the side of you that you don't love and you don't want to deal with. So my first marriage, I definitely went into it with some unrealistic expectations, expecting him to fulfill parts of me that wasn't, love or, poured into as a child. And I wanted to, for me, that's what's really major for me is right now is just getting myself together financially, mentally, spiritually, so that when someone comes into my life, they're not, my cup is already running over. You're just adding to it. I'm not going to be, so that's whether it works, if it works out or not, I'm not feeling like less than, and I'm not feeling, it's just, okay, this didn't work out, and that's okay. So what's for me, just self-awareness, healing, and get my ish together so that when someone comes into my life, I have nothing but peace to give, nothing but love to give, and be in a position to really receive it and not you know, and even through my dating experiences, you know, I'm healing through a lot of my dating experiences. I've done a lot of inner work on my own, but through dating, I'm like, ooh, okay, I got to work on this over here. I realize I still have the issue over here. So dating during the healing process has really helped as well, to shine a light on the areas that I'm not seeing on my own and in my own time, in my own bubble, in my comfort zone. So that's how I'm getting myself together, is getting me together.
I love it.
I wanted to ask this question. I mean, can I insert a question?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Earlier when we were talking about, like, working on yourself and not having expectations for marriage, like, I want to ask the married ladies this: as a single woman, where's the line between I want to be healthy and whole and healing is a lifestyle, not a destination? Like, because I think you have some camps of single people who are like, I've got to be completely 100% whole, and it's like it's not really a destination. So where do you gauge where you're like, okay, yes, working on myself and healing is an ongoing process, because as life continues to happen, I will experience more things and more trauma, but also the people who are just like, I don't need to do anything, and I'm just going to, jump off the cliff and go in. Like, where's the line there?
I will say this, and Evelyn and I have had this conversation before, where I think Christian culture, I think we have a lot of pastors and gurus, single gurus, that really have monopolized on the single woman. And one of the things that has been sold to single women is that like this, you have to be perfect before marriage. You got to have a perfect credit score. You got to be making 6 figures. You got to have gone through 155 rounds of therapy. You've had to read 30 books. You've had to go to all the single conferences. And truth be told, like we've talked about here, is some things won't even be revealed until you said, I do. And yes, you should be equipped with your community. You should be equipped with premarital counseling and just therapy in general based on what your specific needs are. But you can be working on yourself and going out. You can be working on yourself and dating. You can be working on yourself, on your credit, and meeting guys and stuff like that. And so, because truth be told, there's only but so much time. You know what I mean? It might take you 5 years to get credit where it might take you 10 years to reach 6 figures. It might, our ovaries only good for so long. You know what I mean? If that's the goal, if you want to have children, stuff like that. So we don't have all kind of time to sit here and look for perfection. And truth be told, way back in the day, no one had nothing when they got married. Nobody had a credit score. Nobody had a property. Nobody had anything. And so I think this idea that it cannot be done, it won't happen for you unless everything is perfect and all your ducks in a row, I just think is not true.
I think Jasmine was correct when she said that it has a lot to do with self-awareness. So I think that it is, doing all this working on yourself, it's more important to know that there is work to be done, and knowing which areas and categories that they fall under. Looking at my mother and recognizing some of the traits that I have from her, that I'm like, ooh, I maybe need to work on this one, in my marriage, because I see me bringing it into it, but being aware of them, so when it happens and you're having the conversation and that comes out, oh, this is the thing that I needed to work on. Let me try to correct it, or being able to communicate that to him to know, hey, this is this is something that I struggle with. I'm not really good with talking about my feelings, so when something that comes up that's, sensitive to me, and I'm being vulnerable, that this is like a real moment happening here, so that they can also work with you as well too. I think it's really important to be self-aware in that.
I hate to, I don't really hate, I'm not gonna lie, but I just need to just touch on this tangent on men monopolizing on women's process and journey of singleness and marriage. And that's for another day, another time. But I just wanted to acknowledge that hashtag no mo. Okay.
Yeah.
And, I think platforms like this, really touch, because just like you said, they talk about like basically this elixir of how to get it done, but we're leaving out like self-awareness. And I am a Christian, so I believe in the Holy Spirit and in discernment, and God will let you know what I mean, like those feelings, that intuition that women have, whether you're a believer or not. You could call it whatever you want to call it. You could call it Jiminy Cricket, but there is an ability and a divineness that lies within women for us to be able to just feel like an energy in other people, in situations, even without proof, and like Alice says, like it all comes back to self-awareness, because that line for me may be different for my best friend, but if I'm self-aware, I can know, like, listen, I really am married and a girl got needs. I really want to be married and a girl got needs, but more than fulfilling my sexual needs, I need to work in this area, and I have no business even being in a relationship right now. And really having those hard conversations with yourself, because if you can have self-discipline with yourself, then you increase your chances of being a responsible steward of somebody else that you want to call husband.
So the next question is, knowing what you know about marriage, what's one advice that you would give to your single self?
I think I said it before. Do more therapy, sis. Just like that. Period.
I think for me, I would have told myself to slow down. I'm my husband's second wife. So when he and I met, he was in the process of getting a divorce. We were friends for a while until his divorce was final and all that other stuff. And then we started dating afterward. But knowing what I know now and having gone through some of the challenges with him that he's had to face because he didn't take enough time in between, we didn't need to get married so quickly. Even though, I mean, we dated, let's see, I think we dated and we were engaged all together maybe a year and a half before we got married. Even if we'd have just continued to date and not be engaged, I feel like that would even have allowed him to have more time to deal with his own trauma and his own issues. And that would have allowed me more time to work on myself as well. Him to be able to process and grieve his divorce. And I needed more time to continue to work on myself because I grew up an only child. So selfish, inconsiderate, prideful, all the above. It's me. So unfortunately, he's had to work through those things with me. And so I think us having more time would have been better.
I think for myself, my advice to young Alice would be to take some time or extra time to set yourself up financially prior to coming into the relationship. I think I did okay. I went to school, and I got my career going, but like Lexi said, we were going to get married anyhow. It didn't have to be right then. Take some time to build up my own personal savings and, building my own credit score by myself, paying off, my car, and working to, tackle on some of my personal debts before coming into a relationship.
Alice and I have had this conversation before. The single thing, the reason why I don't want to touch on anything else, because I feel like this is probably the one thing somebody might not say, and that is, I wish I bought a house before I got married. Understanding the process now that when my credit score was good and I was making good money and I had a solid savings, that was the time. You know, when you have a wedding, that's a lot of your money gone. You know what I mean? And God forbid you charge some stuff, now your limit is all the way up. You're gonna have to wait for some time after you get married to even start that process. And the market goes up and down all the time. If the time is right, you have the cash, you're making good money now, you can afford it, do it now. I think what stopped me was the idea of, oh, again, the fairy tale. I want to move into my place with my husband. I don't want to have to, you know, own a home by myself. And I let that thought get to me, not fully understanding that. Do it if you can. I think that's the advice that I would give to someone. That is something that you have under your name, and, you know, for yourself, which I think is important. Maintaining a sense of identity and independence, even financially. You know, that's something that was poured into me. Have your little something, something on the side. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I would say. Along with having a good spiritual practice, because marriage will test you on so many different levels. Sometimes you just need a minute and several minutes and moments. Journaling has saved me. My trips to the park, my walks in the park, my car rides have saved me. Whatever you need to do that gets you together, have that practice now, because you will be exercising it a lot in marriage. So that's like the other thing I would say. So let's move on to the next one. Are men bothered by body hair, or if you were on your period during intimacy?
I feel like it depends on the person. I mean, my husband, you know, is a grown up. And, you know, and we're like both adults, so who cares? So
Men don't care.
Yeah.
Men don't care.
I think we care more than they
We
care.
definitely care more. We definitely care
Oh,
more.
absolutely. Like, if sex is on the table, like this is an option.
They gonna
We're
take
doing
that.
this.
They gonna take it.
I don't care if you
Man,
haven't shaved. Now,
Nothing.
you know, if you're into oral sex, you might want to, you know, trim the forest. You know, be courteous. Be courteous, you know, because you want it done right. But outside of that, if your legs aren't shaved and your armpits are hairy, he don't care.
I think for me though, it definitely helps. It helps me to feel good though. Me to feel sick. Because he'll say he doesn't care. I'm like, hold on. He doesn't care. But for me to, you know, get in the mood, I need to feel good about what I got going on. The next one is about sex too. It says, does sex become a chore?
It is a joy. However, there are, as life ebbs and flows, your situations change, because we as women, our engines are revved differently than men. You know, they have very, very clear associations with, you know, naked body, sex. Let's do it. You know,
Okay.
She made a great meal, sex. That's, you know what I mean? Had a great day, sex. Stressed out, sex. Like they're very, very straight with that. For us, we as women, we're unique in the way that our whole life experience plays a part in our receptiveness to having sex. So oftentimes, now this is, you know, and everybody kind of responds differently, but for some people, when they're stressed, don't touch me. I want nothing. Don't bother me. If I'm tired, don't work. No. But other people, when they have a bad day, that's what they turn to. They want sex. Other people, no. But a lot of times in life, as you grow in your marriage and as life happens, and it can and does and will, sometimes the stressors of life will dampen that, and it takes more energy to get engaged with that. After you have kids, you're exhausted. You're like, bro, I haven't showered in 3 days. I don't even know why you're rubbing my elbow right now. Like, so it's a whole different thing. And so understanding that he changes, your body changes, you change, your hormones change. So sometimes it can take more effort to get into the mood or even do it because of the other things that are happening in life.
So the question was about sex being a chore, but and I think we can say to some degree it can, but if you are trying to be intentional in creating spaces of intimacy, then you won't get so hung up on just, just sex, penetration, right? Like there's other ways to be intimate because, I mean, like Lexi said, like there's so many, especially with women, men are just not going to understand. And I hope there's a man watching. Like our bodies go through so much hormonally. Like let's not even talk about life happening. Just developmentally, physiologically, we can be allergic to a deodorant we've been wearing since middle school, like tomorrow, and it's the same thing just with ourselves, just our whole bodies. And if you diminish sex void of intimacy, it will be a stressor and it will feel like a chore because literally hormonally, I know like in my marriage, I mean off bat, like contraceptives jacked me up like completely, and I had no idea what was going on at all. Hair falling out, I mean having allergic reactions, I'm thinking it's stress. I mean even the desire to, and I was a newlywed. And I'm disappointed in myself. And I had all these then I started having all these pressures about like what a wife is supposed to do sexually, how you're supposed to do that. And then dealing with the emotional aspects of gearing myself off of, okay, you're not single, like you're married, like you can give yourself permission to indulge to the fullest capacity, and not feel guilty. But you got all that going on. Literally, it takes so much energy just to like get ourselves up to like, it's like a marathon. Like I done worked a 9 to 5 just trying to have sex. Like, and sometimes it's exhausting. So I will say, like I said, we had a very unique situation, a health situation in my case. You have to find ways to create intimacy with your partner, because it may not always be available just sex, but if we're both intimate in different ways consistently, when we do have sex, it's like still phenomenal, but it's not like it's not it doesn't become a super void.
I refer to it as, just to piggyback off of Jasmine, investments. Like I literally, that's what I call them to him, because they're so on and off. They're always ready, in my opinion. They're just, in my experience, just always ready. And it takes just a little bit more work, a little bit more effort. And so I tell him, like, when you do certain things, it's an investment, you know what I'm saying, into it. And so just like this morning, just personal story. This morning, he's on his phone. I pray, I get back in the bed. I'm just laying down chilling. And then he's still on his phone. He'll say a word to me after good morning and stuff. He's on his phone. And then he reaches over and tries to touch. You're not going to ignore me and then try to reach over and touch, you just ready. No, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about how the night was for you. Did you sleep well? Did you not sleep well? Like, don't make me feel like I'm a prostitute. That's my thing. You can't just, you know what I mean? You got to woo me just a little bit. Like, I'm your wife. And I know that about myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so when he does little certain, like yesterday he brought me flowers. I'm like, ooh, that's an investment. Like, you know what I'm saying? And understand that about yourself, and get to know what gets you off. Can I say that? What gets you off, and what gets you in the mood, what gets you feeling good about him, you know what I mean? And let him know that, like, ooh, I like when you squeeze my booty like that, or I like when you know what I mean? And so it helps him in the process so that it doesn't become a chore.
Don't discount the sexiness of a man washing dishes.
Yeah.
Okay? Listen, If you come home from work and the kitchen is clean, oh, you gonna get some. Okay? Like, listen, understand, like, and make it clear. Listen, bro, I hate washing dishes. So if I come in here and you're elbow deep in the sink, bro.
Elbow deep.
Like, I got you. Okay? Because sometimes there are things that, like, as a married person, as you discover your rhythm as a couple, there are certain things that is just gonna like get under your skin because you were used to living a certain way, he was used to living a certain way. And like for me, it's dishes. Like I hate coming home to a sink full of dishes.
Mm-hmm.
My husband works from home, so you been here all day. Why the dishes not clean? I don't understand. And so then I come home, dishes in the sink. Now I'm already like, not that I'm angry, I'm just annoyed. Mm-hmm. So that puts more of my brakes on rather than my accelerator. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take twice as much for me to get to the accelerator because I'm already like, should have did the dishes, right? You know? So now if I'm going to cook dinner, that means I got to clean the dishes, then cook, then clean the dishes again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So being able to like communicate to your person, like, hey, you know, this really like hampers my ability to come home and jump your bones. Yeah. Because I want to. But then when I see this sink, then I don't want to. Mm-hmm. And it may not make sense to you, and that's okay. But just know if you wash the dishes, you're gonna get some.
I struggled with that. I struggled with withhold. Not. I don't want to say withholding. I feel like that sounds bad, but I struggle with that because there'd be times where, okay, we're beefing, and then I would, you know, I might be in the mood, and then I'll go back to beefing with you. That's just, I don't know why I'm wired that way, but I don't know. For me, I felt like I don't know. I feel like my drive is up there, and it's real hard for me when we're in those seasons for me not to want to. I could not like you. Get it, like, because I don't know. I think for women, sex is for us too. It's for us too.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, you know, not saying like it's. I don't want to attach it to like a chore or something like that. There are times I just want to jump your bones. You know, all this stuff is still going on, but I'm gonna get mine.
See, and that's important because, and I'm glad you said that, because everybody's brakes and accelerators are different. Yeah. And they have different sensitivity. You know, you may have very little brake, and you know, your accelerator is just like, all right, let's go whenever, right? Mm-hmm. Other people might have their accelerator might be fine, but they might have a little bit more pressure on their brake because of certain things, traumas, stress, hormones, diet, whatever. So, you know, and none of it's wrong. It's just how you're made.
And I just want to say, I need whatever elixir there is to, you know, jump the bones when you're mad. Because I'm trying to tell y'all, when your girl is mad,
no, when I'm mad.
Listen, when your girl is mad, ain't nothing. I mean, dry as the heels of Gilboza. Like,
no, like, but that's why I say struggle with it, because there are times when I don't, like, the mad part of me does not want you. I want you, you know, you. You know, that's the part I struggle with, because I feel all that, but I struggle with that disconnect. I do.
Yeah, girl, but still, because I mean, my prideful self, I could be mad for a long time. The Lord is working on me, but you know what I mean? But it's just like, yo, this is not sustainable. This is not practical. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah. It is, like Lexi said it perfectly. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but I wish I did have elixir, like to be like, okay, we gonna handle business, okay? And I'm still mad. But I can't, like, for me, I cannot make that connection. I got to like you, and all, you know, all of the whole shebang?
Because my husband doesn't even try when we're at odds. He don't even try it.
Nah,
So like
mine
I
doesn't.
honestly, I've never had to actually, and this is just a personal conviction, I actually don't believe in withholding, and I've never done that yet. So, but at the same time, I lucked out because he don't be trying it when he knows I'm upset with him or when we're not good. Like there is no pause on it. Like, let's just stop what's going on right here. I think we're both the type of people that we need to talk this out first and be good with each other and both be in a good mental place for us both, because it's just better when we're good. Like when we're good and we're feeling each other and I feel good about you, you feel good about, you wash the dishes, it's better in that environment for me.
I think for me it was like learning to be open about the things that were inhibiting me, you know, because like, you know, I guess for you it's like, okay, we both know that we're not good, but like for us it was like, he's good but I'm not good inside my head, but he doesn't know that. So it's like me being open and learning to address that. So I'm like, hey, this is affecting our sex life because I'm mad about XYZ in my mind, you know, and let's talk about it so we can improve it. I feel like sex can be a chore if you're not like addressing some of the issues that are underlying or some of the things that are in your head and you're just doing it because, you know, he wants it right now. Then yes, it'll feel like a chore. But if there's something going on in your mind that like is bothering you, but like just being open and like talking about it and having a conversation and then having that sense of intimacy in that way, because we're having, you know, a vulnerable moment in that way. And then it makes just the sex even better.
I have a question as a single woman in the room.
Go ahead.
Jasmine brought this up when she was talking about this, about making that switch from being a single person and having, I grew up in the church. And so this notion of like, sex is bad, don't do it. And then expecting to flip it over like a light switch when you get married. And so I'm just curious, like, did any of you guys struggle with that? Or like, was it an easy switch? I'm just curious.
I feel like I really struggled with that. And I had sex with my husband before marriage, but even still after, it felt wrong. Like, I'm like, even though it's okay now, and then it didn't help that I was at my parents' house, you know, after we were married as well too. Everything about it just felt wrong. And I was just like, I can't. So it took some time to try to reverse the feelings of like shame really that came along with sex for myself. And that was something that I really had to work on, like inside myself, and knowing that I am worthy, this is not shameful, this is not dirty, you know, and kind of trying to overcome that within myself.
I had similar issues because I was a virgin when I got married. And so for me, that trying to flip that switch of like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing to this is what I'm supposed to be doing was a real challenge. I had similar issues and adverse reactions to contraceptives like Jazz, in the sense that like I had no libido, even like I might be like, and this might be TMI for some people, but I might be like fully wet in the beginning and then be bone dry midway through. And I'd be like, oh, this hurts. Stop, please, quit. No, this ain't gonna work. And having to, you know, and I switched different contraceptives and I would have similar or, you know, worse effects from those things, not realizing that that's what was causing it. So to compound the religious instruction of, you know, you're going to hell if you have sex, and then now I'm broken because I waited my whole life to do this and now it hurts. And So this is my marriage now. Like I can't even have kids because sex, I can't do this. It hurts. And so then having to work through those hangups of, you know, I'm not broken. Contraception is the devil for me. So, you know, and having it, I mean, it took years to work through the brokenness and heal from that and fully embrace. And I'm still in the process of fully embracing my sexuality. And because after my son, I tore in 3 places. So that was a whole nother thing of like, this hurts. Once again, let's reopen that initial wound. I'm broken. So, you know, it's, I think it's difficult and a challenge as a Christian when you grew up with the whole, you know, sex is bad. And it's so funny that you asked that question because Pastor Todd from Transformation Church preached a sermon on sex last week, like very explicitly. Like his first point was sex is good. And it was like, oh, light bulbs for people. But it's really important, I think, to now that you're now as a single person, start working on the framework of your mind, understanding that sex is good. Sex was ordained by God, and in the confines of marriage, it is undefiled. So whatever freaky thing you want to do when you get married, have your way. Every freaky thing. Straps on the bed, swing from the rafters, lube it up, whatever. You know, smack it up, flip it, rub it down. Whatever you want to do, it's all good. And I think starting to just challenge those thoughts that you have now is super important so that it's easier to flip that switch.
You know, for me, it's a continual work, and I'm intentional with my community. Like, I have friends who will send me literature on the female ejaculation, like, hey sis, you and your husband enjoy. I have people and mentors that there's not a question that I can't ask, and they'd be like, all right, sis, tutorial 101. We about to, like, you know, encourage, speak over yourself and encourage yourself in the Lord in this particular manner. You know, where it's not a taboo thing, but it does, I mean, for me, it's a continual work. Just like I have to be intentional with addressing my past trauma and hurts, I have to be intentional. And I have a bomb partner in that he's not perfect, but I can talk with my husband about my fears, about my concerns. If I'm feeling shameful, why do I think certain things? And to be honest, it's not everybody's story, but at least to a certain degree, he's been very patient, very understanding, and proactive. Like, okay, like, how do I make you feel more comfortable? How do you trust me, you know, in this area, you know? So partner selection is also very important with these things, because you couldn't tell, you know, this was all left out, you know, this doesn't come up in premarital counseling, right? That you might have some type of emotional block sexually, or that contraceptives can change your whole, you know, body flow. And now you have to try to explain to your partner that you're still attracted to them, even though your body isn't responding.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to ask that question because, you know, when I was talking earlier about, like, you know, me preparing, you know, for marriage, like, I got from couples like, yeah, 3 to 4 times a week is, you know, healthy. And I was like, oh, or like, you know, you might have to put it on the calendar, or, and like, it was just kind of like, and them telling me like, you're gonna have to undo this good girls don't do fill in the box. Mm-hmm. And like Lexi said, wives do whatever, you know what I mean? So, and like, I mean, so I've been working on that mindset, but I know I have friends who are just like, it's 30, even at our age. I'm like, y'all, we grown. What is this about? But yeah, growing up under that, it's bad. So
talking about it was awkward for me. Can't we just leave that in the moment and not like have a conversation about it? Like, that was weird to me. Like, I'm like, no, it's gonna take away from it. If we talk about it, let's just not talk about it. but that was because I was uncomfortable with just the whole thing, you know. But again, I was blessed with a very good partner who's open and honest, who wants to know, who wants to please. So he wants to talk about it, and just through understanding that this is a safe place and under the sanctity of marriage, we can have those conversations. And like Jasmine mentioned, community definitely helped me, you know, going to the adult stores with Lexi and Jazz and picking things out, you know, dropping in the group chat on Valentine's Day, like, what should I get? I'm in the store, help me out. Just helps me to feel more comfortable about it. And this is why, you know, I tell my followers all the time the importance of having a community of women is so invaluable. And I hate that in past lives, you know, women have been so competitive in general, and have not been able to really benefit from having good, high quality, God-fearing, loving, you know, women in your life. It's such a blessing. And I think part of the reason why I've been more comfortable in this area, more open in this area, is because of having a community of women. It has been very useful to me, because unfortunately it's true. In the Christian community, it's frowned upon in general. And then once people get married, they don't talk. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Who is in charge of the finances, you or your husband?
I am.
Okay, let's talk about it.
I've always been the finance person in the relationship. Most often in relationships, you know, opposites attract. So you'll have a saver and a spender. And so my husband will nickel and dime you to poverty, just going to grab chips and a snack. And I'm just going to run to 7-Eleven real quick. And then I'm going to just go to Sprouts real quick. And, I just got this little tech gadget, and this new mic is at Guitar Center, and unreliable. So yeah, so for the most part, I handle most of the finances, but we do things together. So it's, you know, we both have bills that we're responsible for. We have our Money Mondays that we talk about what bills are due that week, you know, how much money we're working with that week. We have separate accounts. So eventually we'll have a joint account. But right now we have separate accounts. And, you know, so we just kind of talk about, you know, what's coming out, what we need to do we need to move money, that kind of thing. You know, if I'm running short, he covers me. If he's running short, I cover him. So it's a team effort. But, you know, when it comes to just like the overall management of it, it's me.
I'll say for my husband and I, we kind of have like a separate but equal thing going on. We both handle the finances. For us, we're kind of on the same page. I don't think that either of us is more a spender or a saver. I think we are both on the same page, like fiscally responsible. So we were like very open with each other about like what our financial goals are. We have a shared account, but it more serves as like a spend account. And then we both have individual accounts and individual savings account. But we're very open with each other as far as knowing what goes in and out of the separate accounts. And if something is like a major big purchase, we'll talk about it first before we just go out and get it. But it's not really asking each other for permission to do whatever. It's just having a conversation so that we both know what's going on.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie, like, no, we're gonna be asking for permission on both ends. I'm just keeping it 100 because if we have certain goals, you know, like it's not feasible to go out and buy a new bass guitar. You know, it's like, okay, like if this is what you want, then we need to add it as a underlying bottom line budgeting item, and then we pour into the pot, and eventually. But I think I'm a combination of both, Alice and Lexi, in that we have a joint account together, and then we also have separate accounts and savings accounts, void of each other, but like all of our passwords, like at any point in time, there's not a point where I can't, if I needed to, which I really feel like it's pointless, but it's just another gesture of building your confidence in transparency. If I need to go look at his account, I can. If he needs to look at my account for any reason, he can. You know, there's no, even though he calls my accounts hidden, because your girl, like I do, I'll stack them chips and it's time to go on vacation. And he's like, babe, we can't afford this. I was like, I got you, boo. Like I told you, like we got this. Then he'd be like, oh, it's in Hidden Figures. I'm like, yes, it is. While I am the main one that I'm a stickler, like I don't spend money unless I look at my bank account. Over the years, I've learned how to partner with him, because I'm not gonna lie, like for me, it's just like, well, I'm the better one with finances, just listen to me, pretty much. But it doesn't work like that, as I've learned throughout the years. So we went through financial peace together, and then just creating a space where he feels empowered, and for me to really let go of my control issues and allow the thing is like, if I create the budget, then there has to be something that the other person, or if he does it, we have to allow the other person to adjust whatever it is that they need to, without like just as they need to. So, but I'm still the main one. I'm just saying.
I am the main one. I will say this. I didn't want to be. Like, even as a single person, I wanted to be with someone who was going to take care of the money, because I just don't like to have to deal with it, to be honest with you. But I think sometimes, you know, it's whoever's better at the task that has to take over. And I think it will evolve. It will change. You know what I mean? Right now, it may be this way. Down the line, we may do it a different way, you know, but right now, 1 year in, we have a joint account and I got my money on the side. That's how it goes. We have our own responsibilities in paying whichever bill. We check in with each other at the top of the month, let each other know what's about to come out, and budget, and, you know, move on. One thing about me is everything has to run in a system. I can't be micromanaging everything. So we sit down, really that conversation is just like, it's the first of the month. You know what I mean? Be prepared for what's going to happen, what we already have automated. So I think as women, we think 30 steps ahead. And so it's like, he'll run in a whole circle. And I'm like, listen, if you ran in a straight line, you would have cut here, 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 and here. So it's not that he's like excessive. I think he doesn't see like deals or cuts like I do. And so sometimes he can be a little bit wasteful in that way, but he's definitely not a spender. Like when big money is about to come out, I wouldn't call it quite permission, but we need to have a conversation, because we have goals. And so wanting it and we having the money is not enough. Like, so is this purchase a part of our core values as a family? Whether it's spending time together, is this a trip? You know, does this mean we might need to cancel something later on in the year? How much of it? You know, how much is this going to cost us? So like wanting something is not enough. And even if it's something that we want, I get him invested. Like, I like handbags. He knows it. They're not cheap. All right, that's a Gucci or that's a whatever. And he knows the brands. He knows who has good quality, not good quality. He asked me, how long does this one last? Like, is this a trendy bag or is this a lifetime bag? Like, he'll ask me. I've got him invested in it to the point where he's like, yeah, babe, you should probably get that one. Or no. And the same thing with his bikes. Like, certain things, like, we get each other invested in it, so we understand its value to us. So it's not just like every little thing we see we get, you know what I'm saying? There have been times where we had conversations, it's like, we can't do that right now. Like, I get that you want that or I want that, but right now where we are in life, what we're saving up for, we can't do that right now. And there has to be a level of self-denial that needs to happen when it comes to finances for the greater goals, you know, that we have. Because it's like, you can't be mad later where it's like, oh, I wish we could, or I wish we were able to, when we weren't consistent, intentional, when we were supposed to. Okay, well, I guess this kind of goes with the last question, but it says, how did you approach the topic of merging your finances? And do any of you have separate accounts that your spouse is aware of, although has no access? My answer to that is yes. I think Jazz, yes. Lexi,
Yes.
so, yes. So, thoughts of dating outside of your faith?
I don't particularly like it. And that's because I feel like marriage has a whole bunch of other things to be on different pages about. And I feel that having a completely different faith sometimes just adds to more layers to things of confusion, you know, things to have disagreements about, especially when they're your core fundamental beliefs. Those are the things that come up every single day. Those are the things that come up every single week and can cause, you know, resentment in the relationship. And I think that once you have kids, even though I don't have kids right now, it adds another layer of confusion of knowing, you know, which side to choose. So personally, for me, it's not something that I wanted to do. I understand in other situations, people have done it and it works for them, but that's just something personally that I decided that I did not want to do.
I'm not gonna do it. I've seen it, and I've seen it actually not go well. To Alice's point, like, how do you raise the kids? You know, if I pray before I make decisions and prayer is something you don't do, if I want to volunteer in the church, but you don't believe in that, and you want me to go to the football game with you, but I want to go to Bible study, I just think, you know, your beliefs run your decision making and your actions. And so that's a minute by minute, day by day thing. And so I have not dated outside of my faith. I probably will. I mean, I can tell you now, I will not. If it means I will not get married, which but I won't marry outside of my faith. So for all of those reasons, and like Alice said, like, there's enough. Just, we grew up in two different houses with two different parents, with two different lifestyles, with two different ways of approaching world. Now
That's enough.
Like,
That's a lot.
you know what I mean? So, yeah, the faith part, like, that's a part of my everyday belief, vernacular, action, decision making, the way I view the world. So I don't need the extra conflict.
Yeah, I did it and I wouldn't do it again. Yeah, it just, our foundation from the jump, it could have never been solid for that one reason alone. Just trying to go to church and do things was always really difficult. He would come from time to time, but there was no consistency. And I felt like I was growing in a lot of ways spiritually. And, I felt like I was, growing without him. There were things that I wanted him to see, experience, hear. And, I don't know. It kept us going on two different paths just from that one thing alone. So yeah, I would recommend it. And I definitely wouldn't do that again. That has to be in place before I get married again.
One, I guess I would ask the person, what do they mean by faith? Because you can have people within the same denomination believe two totally different things. And to be honest, it worked out that way, but I was always open. I wasn't necessarily a person like, oh, they have to be the same denomination as me. My baseline is I have my core values does this, like, believing in God is important to me, you know, having a spiritual community, you know, is important to me, you know. So there's certain core values dealing with faith and spirituality that I had. So if a person, whether they were a part of the denomination or not, right, you know, it would be fine by me. I will say, my parents, definitely, that for this reason, just different cultural backgrounds and different denominations, it was always tension, you know. One would always be trying to slip us pork, and my mother was like, no, you know. An auntie took me to go get my ears pierced, like, and this was, I wasn't even in middle school yet, you know, but that was just like a big no, you know. For my mother, I, outside of like baptism and my maybe another church service, like I don't have any adolescent, when my parents were together, memories of them both in church together, you know. And so what I did take from my parents' situation, though, was to make sure I had somebody, that I chose somebody who agreed with me at my core values as far as faith, because I didn't want to be that girl that, not that I need a man to be at church, but that woman, you know, like, it's always that woman that we see that goes to church, you know, with her kids or single, and it's like, oh, you're married, you know what I mean? But the husband never shows up, you know, she's going through and she's active and she's involved, and that might have worked for her. But when I saw that, not necessarily as an indictment, but I was like, I want to share communal spiritual experiences with my partner, you know. And I don't want to have to, if we decide we're going to go to a football on whatever day, a football game, and not go to church, then let it be us, but not that you're sitting up at home with your, you know, feet up, drinking a beer, and you know, I'm at church, you know, lonely, you know. So yeah, I if it's stripped down from denomination and it's truly a question about faith, I definitely think that it's absolutely important to be with somebody who believes, you know, what you believe.
It goes back to what we talked about before, self-awareness, understanding that you know what's really important to you, your faith, you know, some of the hobbies you have, you know, or some of the things that you find important. You know, for me, it was music. I need to be able to connect with somebody who gets me. You know, if you don't understand my music language, that's going to be hard for me to talk to you. And I'm going to have a whole life that you're not going to be a part of, because that's what I do. So being able to share those things. So it's really important to have those foundational things and be aware of, like, okay, this is non-negotiable for me.
Yeah, I think being spiritually compatible is just very important. It was important to me. You know, I can't tell somebody what'll work for them or not, but like everybody has already said, and I'll echo, there are enough things for you to disagree about, and this one thing is not the one. And so it's definitely something that I looked at, you know, from without my influence, without my leading, where are you spiritually? What do you do? What's your default? What's your practice? Is it like, you know, have we had those moments where you're like, you know what, let's just pray, you know what I mean? And have I seen you initiate that? That was really important to me, because I knew that I couldn't be with someone who wasn't God-fearing. So it was something that was very, very important to me. So if, you know, you are a woman of faith and you're watching this, and you don't skip on those things, you know, don't skip on that, because you will regret it later. You'll regret it later. Now, when I was playing around and I wasn't serious for real, it didn't matter. But when it was time to get down and make some serious decisions, then I knew that that was definitely a priority for me, because life, I have learned in this first year of marriage, life gets real quick. And so you're going to need some prayer. You're going to need some moments. There's been some moments where I had to pray for, Lord, listen, there's something I can't deal with. I can't see, I can't reach. I need you to fill in the gap here. And it's been those prayers that has mended some things for me, and opened up conversations, or even opened my husband up to having conversations that he was pretty, closed off to. So that's one of my tools. That is one of my tools in my toolbox. And I know, where I would be if I didn't have that aspect in my relationship. Next question, single ladies, how do you meet quality men? How are you navigating COVID season and dating?
Here's the thing about the quality men, and Patricia and I have addressed this on our lives. They're everywhere. Quality men abound. I think a lot of times when I hear that question, and I know when I had that question, at least when I was in my 20s, is I didn't know what a quality man looked like. I thought that a man should function the way that I should function, and that's what made him quality. And so when I unlearned that, I was like, oh, like there's good men running around here loose everywhere. They're in the grocery store, they're at the gym, they're at the post office, they're at work, they're in Facebook group that you're in. I've had people slide into my DMs. I've met people in a parking lot. Like the good men abound. Now, COVID, I've been at the house. So for me, it's kind of like, that's kind of on pause. I've tried the online dating thing. It's not really my thing. It's just an introductory service. But some people are out here living their best love lives during COVID. Okay. People are getting engaged. People are meeting people. That's not my story at the moment. But outside of, a worldwide pandemic, they abound. They're everywhere. If you can recognize them.
Yeah. Like you said, great men are everywhere. And my dating experiences have been pretty good. And I was worried about that because when I was entering into the dating world, I got a whole lot of, ooh, good luck, and ooh, you got kids, and ooh, right? So I didn't know what to expect, but a lot of my experiences went very well. I met a lot of great men, but they weren't for me. So it was easy for me to let them go. Even if they were a great guy, you're just still not the guy for me. So that's been something that has been, and I think, not to say, how do I say this? Because I've been married, it took some pressure off of me. Like I'm able to go into it with a little bit more of a clear mind and be a little bit more at ease about certain things and kind of letting things play out. But yeah, it's been great for me. I'm actually in a relationship. My first time kind of saying this publicly. We're coming up on our 1 year anniversary. And dating throughout COVID has been difficult, just a lot of FaceTiming and stuff like that. We have this app that we have our date nights on, and we'll play like Pictionary and do our little date nights on like just all these different apps to like interact. So there's a lot of resources out there, and that's just looking them up and finding stuff to keep us, just keeping things going during this really weird, awkward, annoying time.
How do you set boundaries with in-laws?
I'll take that one first. My in-laws are awesome people. Let me start there. I love them so very much. They're wonderful people. They're horrible at boundaries though, which is why we live in Texas and they live in Alabama. So living in a different state sets up lots of boundaries. That is one of the best things we ever did was move out of Alabama to Texas. I think too, understanding and communicating with your spouse, with your partner about whatever issues there are, and you have to do them in a loving way. because that is their mom, that is their dad. And, you know, even though you may see certain things that they don't see, you know, you have to find a way to express those concerns in a way that can be received. Or, like I usually do in my passive aggressive way, I just let him set himself up and then he sees for himself. You know, and then it's like, I can't believe that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. You ready to move now? All right. Let's go. So, I mean, for us, you know, I love my mother-in-law. She's amazing. She's a wonderful woman. But when she has projects, everybody has projects. And, you know, oftentimes she treats my husband as her personal assistant. But he has a whole wife and a whole honey-do list that doesn't include mom. And so there can be lots of issues if he doesn't establish those boundaries. That's not a boundary that I can set for him. And that's why I say you have to communicate sometimes the things that you see in a loving way, because if they can't see it, it's going to be really hard. And sometimes it takes patience and time to let things blow up in a way that, because sometimes they have to get sick and tired and put up boundaries. You can set your own boundaries, you know, if you're having, you know, negative relationships with them personally. But for my experience, it was more of, I see what they're doing to you. That makes me angry. But I can't set the boundary for you. So you have to see what I see. And once that was revealed, then it was like, all right, we out. And now it's great. Like, we FaceTime 2-3 times a week. We visit 2-3 times a year. When we hang out, it is wonderful. It's lovely. We stay for several days. We don't stay long enough to get tired of one another. And then it's awesome. Have no issues. But it's important to figure out how you need to establish those boundaries. For me, it was states.
For the entirety of our marriage, we have lived in a separate state from family. So in that way, we always tell each other, like, we're so blessed, because there are a lot of just dynamics in marriage. And so I can't, for our marriage, imagine the pressure of addressing in person, real time, the family boundaries situation on top of like being married and living in close proximity. So literally, me and my husband have always lived in the middle of the United States with our parents, both families on opposite coasts or on the bottom in the South. I will say it takes time, patience, and consistency and accountability. As you know, the spouse, you need to be honest and vocalize feelings and parse through them. Are you projecting some of what's just going on inside of you, or are these situations happening? And communicate that when you're not pissed off. Because when I am pissed off and I'm irritated, I'm all kinds of sarcastic. I don't care if it's your mother, sister, brother, cousin, pet, whatever. I am, and I'm still working on that. I'm a work in progress, but I am completely inappropriate when I'm pissed off. And most, to be truth, I mean, I'm sometimes inappropriate on a regular day, but still, it's heightened. It's heightened when I'm angry. I will say, it's literally trial and error. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. You don't know, you live with a portion of your spouse, you know, your spouse, you live with your spouse, but you don't live with their family. And sometimes literally you don't know that there are certain boundary issues until they come up. And it's allowing grace and having a foundation of do they really mean harm for me? Like at their core. If you don't believe that they honestly don't mean serious harm to you at your core, then allow that to be your bottom line and try to work from there, you know? And then you got to be patient. Accountability is where if I tell my husband, okay, I agree that this dynamic between me and my mother is unhealthy, and so I'm going to implement this in the relationship, and I agree to that, I have to be held accountable to keep that. Vice versa, he has to establish certain things. So I'm sorry, but you know, it's not a popular thing, but you as a wife or as a husband, you cannot do the work for your partner. Each person has to set their own boundaries for their own family, and they have to maintain, because even if you have the best in-laws, like you're still other, right? So there's always going to be this baseline. Well, my brother, my son, my daughter, my sister was this person before you came in, or they wouldn't have answered like this. You're right. You're right, because marriage dynamics do change sometimes elements of a person or a situation. And so a lot of times we'll try to like chime in and thinking we're smoothing things over with the family when we just like added some good old, what is it, kerosene, where you be squirting the stuff to light the fire, and it's out of control. It's really out of control. So, you know, accountability, but like Lexi, states matter. States, hashtag states matter, space matters. For some people, I mean, it has its negatives, but honestly, we have not had to deal too much with like heavy family boundary dynamics, and we can recover easy because we don't live close to nobody.
Space helps. But I think, and I can only speak for myself, sometimes emotional holds and psychological holds can still be very present even with space and even with distance. I think with men, there is sometimes an unhealthy hold that their mothers have on them, even in their adulthood. And that proves to be challenging once you enter the picture. The rule we have is you deal with your people, I deal with my people. You know what I'm saying? If you got an issue over here, then I'm gonna have a conversation. If I got an issue over here, you have a conversation. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, there's a certain amount of tolerance that people have for their own. Let him deal with his family. You deal with your family. You set your boundaries. You establish your queenship, who you are, what you will stand for, and at the same time pray for him so that God reveals where the unhealthy bonds are, and pray that God helps him to transition through that process. You know what I mean? You know, you gotta leave and cleave. And sometimes culturally, especially if you marry someone who there's a cultural element to it too, you know, especially like in Haitian community, I know in the African community, family is valued so highly. And so it may be even harder to push through that, but you got to do it. And don't let anything slide, because the moment you start letting things slip out of your hands, my dear, it'll only get worse from there. The moment the first thing happens, no, this will never happen again, and I won't tolerate it. And it's just got to be like that.
Yeah, that was very difficult for me as well. Just to piggyback off the other ladies, when it comes to in-laws, I feel like they have to set that boundary. I can, you know, speak for myself, but to really put the nail in it, you know, they really need to hear it from their brother, their son, you know, and Jasmine said something earlier about you being other. I kind of look at it the other way. They're the other now. Mm-hmm. And it's that feeling of them feeling like other that creates that tension, because the place that your new husband is now in your life is now disrupting who he is to them. And it's something that they have to learn to adjust to. And I think a lot of the times I let things slide is because I kind of felt for them, like, okay, I understand, like, this is your son and this is your, you know, but he's mine now. and you guys need to figure yourselves out. But it still takes on each side when it comes to those boundaries. I have to be the one to check my family. He need to be the one to check his family.
This last question, I'm going to paraphrase it. In light of Will and Jada, you know, at the end of their talk at the red table, they said something like, bad marriage for life. So the question is marriage that hard?
With Will and Jada, I felt for them because in marriage, there are a lot of things that you accept of the other person. And there's a lot of things that they accept of you. And there's a lot of things you change, and there's a lot of things they change. But going back to your core values as a couple, there are certain things, and being self-aware, there are things that you as a person need to know what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. Unfortunately, for them, they had their whole marriage played out in front of everyone. And I feel bad for them. Will's having to accept a life that's not really what he wants. And she's unapologetic about that life. You want me, so this is what you get. So if you want to be with me, you're gonna let me do whatever I want. And in my mind, that's not marriage. That's a contract. That's not a covenant. I honestly believe that marriages can survive almost anything if they're both willing to do the work to make it work. But you can't make a marriage work by one person making the marriage work, as we saw with Will and Jada. One person trying to make it work, other person don't care if it worked. So I think that really it's work, but it's not too hard to work together if that's what you are trying to do. But it takes you, it takes God, it takes that person.
I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier as far as core values. Marriage is hard. It's hard. I never wanted, when I talk to people about it, it's going to be hard. But marrying the right person and making sure that you guys have those core values will make it easier. And you can go through bad times and your marriage still be good. So as far as Will and Jada are concerned, I find Will to be more traditional and Jada to be more of the open, hippie, just wanting to be free, the bird. And maybe that they didn't have that conversation earlier on and really establish what they really wanted for themselves and for their family going forward. Even in the episodes where they talk about how they met and they started dating, it all just kind of seemed like they were having fun. And maybe they forgot to have those really important conversations. But yeah, I agree with everything Lexi just said. And to answer the question, is marriage that hard? Yes. But does it have to be a bad marriage? No. And I expect, and I will, going forward, and aware of the dips and the valleys and all the things that can come out of a marriage, but I'm still expecting it to be good by choosing someone who I know is going to be with me, fighting with me, praying with me, making sure that we're on the same page across the board. Because without that, something that is already guaranteed to be hard is just going to, you're just stacking things against yourself. So is it hard? Yes. And that's why it's really important who you choose and making sure that your values align as much as possible. And everything's you're not going to agree on everything, but close to possible.
I don't like when people say marriage is hard, or that, I don't know, or saying that marriage is work. I feel like life in and of itself is hard. And that's what makes it challenging, because life throws you curveballs that you just don't expect. And then it puts pressure on the marriage. Like, for instance, like this whole pandemic thing for myself, working as a nurse, it has raised my level of responsibility in my job, like 10 notches, working in management, to the fact where I'm working, my whole role has changed. People are working from remote, working from home, and now I'm doing 5 other people's jobs. So coming home every day, really unhappy, in my job where I spend most of my time, and trying to vent to somebody who doesn't necessarily understand because they're not a nurse and, they don't know anything about healthcare, and they're being frustrated because he's the closest thing. You're in my house every day, it would feel natural to talk to you about the things that, are going on in my life, and now I'm stressed out, and then I'm taking it out on him because he doesn't understand. And now there's pressure on the relationship. So it had nothing to do with him, or our relationship being challenging, but life put that pressure on it because of something that's challenging that's going on in my life personally. So I feel like in general, most of the challenges that come up are life factors. And I think about my most successful relationship was probably with, outside of my marriage. It's like my relationship with my sister. But we, in generally, we have the same life goals, we have the same mentality, we're always on the same page, but our relationship has gone up and down. Life has thrown things at us to make things challenging, where we're, maybe be upset with each other at the moment, but then we're just not willing to drop the relationship or just jump ship because, we're not happy with each other at the moment. But I feel like in marriage, sometimes people feel like that person is disposable, and because we're not good, for a long period of time, or because they're not, blood family, that we can just jump ship and let it go. I feel that I try to look at my husband like I look at some of the other relationships in my life. And it's just he's my family, and just I wouldn't just be turn my back on my sister or turn my back on my parents. I look at him the same way. So whatever is going on or whatever we're going through, we got to talk about it and figure it out.
I'm a big words person. So I am not a fan of the word hard, because when I think of hard, I think of a brick wall, impenetrable, you know what I mean? So I prefer the word challenging. When I think of the word hard, when you study for a test, or maybe you don't study for a test, and then you sit down and you're like, this test is hard. But when you have the tools that you need and you're equipped, you'll sit down, you're like, this was challenging, but I passed. You understand what I'm saying? So to me, having things like community, having things like a safe space, having tools like being vulnerable, having tools like communication definitely help to aid the process. What I'm more comfortable saying is that marriage is not easy, right? It's not, you're going to walk in and you're just going to know all the right things to do, all the right things to say, you're going to know exactly how it goes. It's not easy, but it is challenging. It will reveal things about yourself that you haven't seen in a while, or that you didn't even know that was there. You know what I'm saying? But if you're committed to the process, and you're intentional in your dealings, that you seek help when you need it, and that you're honest with yourself and honest with your partner, you can have a good marriage. It doesn't have to be a bad one. And I personally had an issue with that whole video. It made me terribly uncomfortable, and it was very painful to watch. And I'm sorry I watched it. But the messaging about marriage, I think, really bothered me, in general, that marriage has to not only be hard, but painful. While you do have low moments and dark times, but this overall idea that somebody has to hurt and put up with consistent foolery, I don't think it's right. Whether you signed up for it or not, if it's not healthy, it doesn't serve you, it doesn't add, like we talked about earlier, add to your cup, then you shouldn't do it. You just shouldn't do it at all, you know? But even with the right person, you are gonna have some challenges. Life is gonna throw you curveballs. And a lot of those challenges that you have between the two of you is affected by outside sources. If whether the outside source is their past, whether the outside source is their family, the outside source is job or whatever. Yes, and a lot of it will be internal between whether it's hormones, you know what I mean, whether it's kids, whatever. But it's not insurmountable. Right? You can have a good, healthy, overall good, healthy, happy marriage, but it's just gonna take some work.
I can't respond to whether or not marriage is hard, but I do have thoughts about the question as a single person. I will tell you my age on the internet anyway. I'm in my upper 30s, and I will say this. When I hear that question as a single person, it gives me the biggest eye roll. Because a lot of times when I hear people respond with marriage is hard, and I can't say whether it is or not, the undertone is that being single is not hard. And so to me, what I've heard from the people in my life that have been married 50 plus years is marriage isn't necessarily hard, is that it's continuous work. And that is the challenge, that there's no days off, right? If you want to have a healthy marriage. Well, I can tell you from being single for almost 4 decades that if you're trying to do life right, it's just a different type of work. It's not necessarily easier or more, it's just different challenges. Whereas the same things that affect a couple, you know, affect a single, but just differently. And so this notion of when I hear people, not necessarily on this call, but like just go on and on and on about how hard and terrible marriage is like, well, why did you get married? Or why are you, if it's that bad, then why did you stay married, right? And if it's that bad, then why are you trying to get me married? You know what I mean? Like it's the messaging is very incongruent. And so I think particularly in Western culture, and I can speak from a single experience, I can't speak from a married experience, we have confused effort with hard. Mm-hmm. We have confused work with hard, right? And I think a lot of people aren't used to doing continuous effort in their own life. And so whether you're single or married, if you're not used to trying to be better, trying to heal, trying to be in good relationship with people, period, then sticking somebody in your house and calling them your spouse, you're just going to transfer that same lack of effort over there. I can't speak. So I think married people can say it's hard or not hard. I would just say as a single, there's always been this undertone like, yeah, I mean, if I was single, it'd be easier. It's just different. And a lot of people who have said they got married at a very young age, or they got married like under 25 or under 30 even, when you hit 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and life starts to happen, there's a different set of challenges being that age and being alone that married people will never experience. So I think to Alice's point, life can be hard. And doing life, whether it's alone and not having any support, and it's all on you and you're all by yourself, right? That has its own set of challenges than incorporating somebody else. And someone that I enjoyed listening to for years, who was married for a very long time, said that, you know, if you know how to do something, it's not hard, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't require the work. And so he was talking about, he had counseled people for years, and he said most people get divorced because they don't know how to be married, not because they don't love each other and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, it's the learning how to be married. And I would say it's the learning how to be in relationship with other people, because life on its own is hard, whether you are by yourself or with someone else. It's just different types of hard. So that's my response to that question. I can't answer that question, but as a single, I'm always like, the assumption is that it's easier over here. And I'm like, sis, it's just different. But
we were struggling when we were single too.
Listen, and the older you get, and you're like in my upper 30s. I'm single with no kids, and I'm my only child, right? So when I start playing the movie about what life will look like at 50 or 60 if I'm not married, and my parents will be gone, that's a different experience than if I'm married with children and in-laws and extended family and siblings, right? Like, it equally hard, just different. So
honestly, I think it's the weight of hard, because I'm still gonna say, sis, woo, some days when I can't wife and can't mom, like, single life was great. Married life is great too. And it also, and single lives had its downs, right? Like, I loved being single. It was magical. And there were also, when I had just life happen, it was also difficult. But I think when you're in, depending on the season of your marriage and just the amount of effort and work and energy in a different way, right? Because I think we've established that self-awareness takes intentional effort, even while that groundwork is laid while you're single. I can't explain it, but there's just a different element with adding another person into the mix. But I agree. And thank you for asserting yourself, in that way, because it is annoying. And as married people, sometimes we forget, like, sis, I think the frustration can come where it's like, yo, like, because you don't have to, when you're married, there's certain things you can't afford, even if you wanted to just look away, or the tension will keep increasing, right? Like the difficulty, it'll start to be infected, if you don't deal with certain things. Whereas it was easier when I was single, not to necessarily not deal with it, but like I admitted earlier, I didn't have to attack it as aggressively,
And see, that's where I would disagree, because if you're trying to do life well, then it's the same, like, then you should have, right?
Yeah.
When I tell people, I was like, listen, at 35, I was diagnosed with cancer, right? Like, it's very different to go to cancer treatments by yourself than to go to cancer treatment with a spouse, even if the marriage isn't good at the time. When my father died, it's very different to sit and eulogize your father alone, right, than it is to sit there with your husband. It's equally hard. Losing a parent is hard. Cancer diagnosis is hard. Just different types of hard, right? So I still kind of stand on I think it's different, for sure. But I think if you're trying to be a good human and do life well, it's just different types of hard.
I really like having your perspective, Evelyn, for real. And I think this is because I got married later. So I lived life, moved around, lived in different cities or whatever, by myself, and made major life decisions by myself. And so I kind of, and then now being married for a year, I kind of see both, you know what I mean? Though marriage is challenging me in a new way, there was also a lot of growing pains also as a single person in making decisions for myself. Making decisions, Jasmine's point in that you don't have to consider another person, but on the flip side, you don't have another person's input. And so sometimes it's a blessing to have someone to be able to be like, no, I know you and that's not for you. Or I know you don't like that now, but in 6 months, you about to be stressed out, yelling at me and everybody else. And so there's both sides to it. It kind of, each thing has its own challenge. While I can agree, there's something about marriage that, puts a mirror up to your face. And one of the
special animal,
the one that blows up little pore, that type of mirror. But being single also, especially when you start after a certain age, it's one thing to be single in your 20s and get married, but then when you get to a certain age and you live life and you're in your career, like when I got married, I was already in my career like 8 years. You know what I mean? You've reached a certain level of life, a certain place in your finances, a certain place in how you like things to run and go. And life happens to you too in that time. So it both things have its challenges, but I don't know that one is harder than the other. That's subjective. I'll say that's really subjective. I think one of my issues with this thought of marriage being hard is, just like we say running through meadows, that picture of marriage is damaging because it doesn't prepare you for marriage. I think the picture of it being super hard also is not productive, because truth be told, most marriages are somewhere in the middle. Sometimes you lean this way, sometimes you lean that way, but overall, it's a good thing. Like, I know growing up, my older cousins would be like, girl, take your time. Girl,
don't get married.
Girl, don't get married. Girl, that was the messaging that I got. I didn't get like, girl, it's great to have a life partner to make decisions with. Girl, it's great, building a legacy. Girl, it's great having someone to share money with. Girl, like, I didn't get that.
It ain't all you all the time by yourself. And I will say this, I mean, I think this is a great dialogue, because I also think being single over 35 is so I'm not even talking about the 25-year-olds when I say that it's different, right? I'm not talking about the 27-year-olds. Like, once you cross over and like, oh, I'm fully grown and like real life has set in, that's I'm comparing that to, and I've met so many people who are divorced who didn't have great marriages, who go, girl, like, listen, even though I had a bad marriage, I still would prefer to be married. You know what I mean? Like, even with the hardships that they had. So I'm like, I think we're all saying the same thing. It's different. And I think it's the perspective. How old were you got married? How young were you when you got married? Do you know what it's like to be like, I can't take a break because everything's on me. If I get sick, there's nobody here. Like, it's just a different type of experience. So.
And thank you. I mean, as a married woman, like, it's good to still have the single friend to be like, sis, you know what I mean? To put yourself, like, be grateful, or even when you're, especially as a woman, when you are in your singleness, there's certain things that are at your forefront that sometimes can get lost as a wife, where it's like, okay, like, sometimes serving as the single friend, like, y'all are our re-up. Like, oh, no, like
it ain't sexy over here all the time, girl.
Though I was single, that's in the past, 7 years ago, right? Like, I don't understand what that means now in my 30s, right? And for a married person, they don't understand, but there is value in being able to connect with somebody at their journey and to remember, you know what I mean? Like
COVID as a single person is a thing. You're alone all the time. For months. Different. Some people are like, oh, my spouse is driving me crazy. My kids are driving me crazy. That is equally as valid.
Right.
Being alone for months on end is a different experience, equally as, like, you know what I mean? And I think that's why I'm so appreciative, Patricia, for this, because it sheds that light. Like, there's pros and cons to both. Pick your heart. You know what I mean? Some people want to pick the heart of being single in perpetuity. Some people want to pick the heart of being married. Pick your heart.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable. I really love this dialogue, because these conversations need to happen. Single people need to sit at the feet of married people, and married people need to sit at the feet of single people. We need to understand what the challenges are and sharing our experiences so that we can all grow. Because sometimes as a married person, the struggle is real, and then you're like, life was so good. We start thinking back, life was so good when I was by myself. I didn't have to worry about your stanky face looking at me every day, and then we start romanticizing that past, forgetting the challenges that we faced. I mean, if y'all are into Bible references, we should have been back in Egypt. Even though we were slaves, we had food, So, I mean, I think it's really important for us to be able to have these conversations, because then we go, okay, yeah, you do have, you know, you have your struggles, we have our struggles. It doesn't make one greater than the other. They're all struggles. We all working trying to get through this life the best way we can. And it's really important, because then when we have these conversations, we can be more empathetic with one another. Mm-hmm. You know, we can give each other grace when we feel like we're spiraling out of control in our singleness or in our relationships. We can give one another grace because we understand the other's perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really grateful for this conversation, because I feel like, you know, although I did, you know, the premarital counseling and all of that jazz when I got married, and just living it for like the past 2 years, it's like I didn't really have a good understanding of what I was getting myself into. And I feel like a lot of the older couples that had been married for a long period of time, they just said, oh, you know, marriage is hard, stay single as long as you can. And that's not teaching me anything. That's not telling me how to be married. That's not giving me tools. That's not giving me skills. So then coming into it, it's like, you know, a huge learning curve, you know, trying to figure out, you know, this other person who I've now invited into my life permanently, and how we can work together and grow together. And, you know, we're both continually changing, but, you know, hopefully in the same direction, you know, going forward. So I appreciate all the different perspectives, and thank you, Evelyn, because you gave me a flashback to the other side, you know, from being single, and it wasn't always easy either, you know, making decisions and just like really hoping for the best, you know, not knowing whether it's the right thing or not. But well, I'm just gonna do it and see what happens, you know, and hoping things turned out all right. And you know, having that person, you know, who's there, who's, you know, my biggest supporter, who's cheering me on, you know, even while I'm going through this transition with my job, and I'm like, oh, this is not working. Well, do what makes you happy. I want to see you happy. So if that means changing jobs, doing something else, and do something else, I'm like, okay, cool, I can do something else. Versus you just sitting there frustrated by yourself and just frustrated. It's just like, you know, well, what am I supposed to do? You know, so having that support and having that encouragement, I feel like marriage is a good thing. And overall, you know, life is hard, and, you know, things are not always going to go your way, unfortunately. But it is great having a person there, you know, who is like-minded, who is on your team, who is trying to push you to be a better version of yourself, and a better version of yourselves together.
As somebody who's been, you know, I was with my ex-husband for 10 years. You know, that includes dating and marriage. And now being unmarried, being a single parent too, I don't know, I'm feeling a little bit of everything that everyone is saying. And it's been a challenge. So in a lot of ways, my life has gotten easier. I have more help now that I'm a single mother. I think when I was married, a lot of people was like, oh, well, you got a husband, you don't need help. And a lot of people assume that when you're married and when you have children, when you have things going on, that you don't need help because you have a husband. And that was really difficult for me with, you know, with having children, is like, I still need help. But for some reason, now that I am divorced, so many more resources, so many more people, so many more hands became available to me. To speak to what Evelyn was saying, there are moments where I'm like, okay, I'm by myself, especially during quarantine. It's just me, you know, my kids, they're yelling at me all day, and I just want adult conversation. I want company. And then just to, even though, and going back to even sleeping in the bed with the same person every night for 10 years, that presence being gone, even if it was a bad presence, was still really hard. I still missed it. I still missed the presence. I missed the routine of marriage. And I loved being married, even though I married the wrong person, and I married for wrong reasons, and my expectations were all over the place, and I hadn't done my inner work. I still love being married. I still look forward to getting married again. I fall in the middle of what everyone is saying. There are pros, there are cons. Marriage for me was hard, but that I also married the wrong person. So I actually look forward to what waits for me when I do it the right way, when I'm married for the right reasons, and I have the support that I need from a spouse, because being a single parent even is easier than being married to the wrong person. My life is so much easier. I may not be able to just get up and run to the store. I may not be able to go to girls' night and do a lot of things, but my life is so much easier as a single parent than having that warm, annoying, negative body next to me.
Ladies, this has been a blessing to me, for sure. Just hearing everybody's perspectives and thoughts and wisdom, experiences, that has definitely, I enjoyed this, and I hope you guys did too. I hope the viewers did as well. One thing that I think is important for women to have is safe spaces, and where we can have these conversations with people from different perspectives. I think that's so valuable and so needed.
You guys, I really pray that that discussion was useful to you. If you made it all the way to the end and watched it all the way through, go ahead and comment below a purple heart so I know who you guys are. If those of you guys who ask questions, thank you for submitting. Thank you to my designer life group. You guys got priority in these questions, and so shout out to you guys. Hopefully you found the answers useful. If you guys have any further questions or some more questions that you guys would like to ask about life, love, dating, leave them down below, guys, because I want to come back, but this time live with one or two of the panelists so we can discuss some of those questions. I pray that it was useful to you. I pray that it was helpful. And listen, I pray that you guys are healthy, mind, body, and spirit, that you guys are well whenever it is that this video meets you. And I will see you guys soon with another video. And as always, God bless. Stop the video. Ooh, my makeup is cute though. Okay, I see you. All right, let me stop.